Okay. Where I would love to start, and one of the reasons I say this is because you've done so many like different things. I'm curious what your parents did for a living and that how that might have shaped some of the choices you made in your life and career, if that
Mm.
works.
Yeah, I would definitely say my dad did not have the typical, 9 to 5 job. He and his father, and it was before I was born, built the largest cabinet manufacturing business in the country, and they did it really by standardizing cabinets. It used to be that you'd have, you'd build your house, you'd build your kitchen, and then you'd have to get custom cabinets to fit it. But they said, hey, we're gonna have 26-inch cabinets, and 30-inch, and 32, and then they started designing kitchens around the cabinets. Um, and then, but after they'd sold the business, my dad was like getting involved in different entrepreneurial activities. So he was an eternal optimist about everything. I'm an optimist, but he was even more of an optimist. And, he did everything from food for like performance horses and parrots, and then he was involved in the coffee business and oil business, and just kind of was doing almost anything that was really interesting to him. um, my mother was didn't work. She was really involved in raising my sister and I. She was very athletic though, so she was also, I think, the first female modern pentathlete, which is running, swimming, shooting, fencing, and horseback riding, like show jumping. So she was
Wow.
very competitive and really. I got into riding horses at a young age and got very competitive, um, with it. And I think a lot of that influence was from my mom. And I used that same spirit, I think, in the school and and everything else I did. Wasn't so much competing with everyone else, but more like competing with myself.
Yeah, that's cool. Where did you grow up?
In
Just like,
Texas, San
okay.
Antonio, Texas.
Did you live like on a farm or kind of in that?
No, yeah,
Okay.
I just lived in a suburb,
Okay.
just like kind
Interesting.
of plain vanilla, nothing. I did have a horses, but that was like a 20 or 30-minute drive. It'd probably be an hour
Oh,
drive now. But
okay. Yeah. Okay. Did you have MIT aspirations college wise?
I had aspirations. I don't know if it was MIT. When I went and searched MIT, was looking for colleges, I saw MIT. I was like, I do not want to go there. It just seemed like a factory. And then I got in, and one of the professors at another school I wanted to go to asked me what I wanted to do. And I told him, he's like, if you got an MIT, you should go there, not here. And so I'm very happy I did. I did go there.
What
Um,
what prompted you to study chemical engineering at that point?
I mean, the truth, it doesn't sound that great right now, but I had no idea. I did like
Yeah.
chemistry and I liked math, but I had no idea. And I just asked what the hardest major was. And they said it was chemical engineering or aero astro. And but aero astro, you had to write a thesis, and I didn't like writing. So I was like, I'd rather take a test. So
Yeah.
I did chemi.
Okay. In high school, like were you pretty dialed into like what were you? I'm curious, like were you playing sports? Were you like really dialed in with your grades and studying? It sounds like.
I I was riding the horses, show jumping. Glad like I was on the US team and went to the Olympic festival, and I think was on that track to go to the Olympics. And a couple of years I didn't even go to school. It was like seventh, eighth, and ninth grade. But then when I went back, I was pretty efficient with my time, and I was kind of like ferocious, devouring the work that
Okay.
I needed to do. Um, and yeah, I had, good grades. I was a valedictorian, and a lot was, I think it was a lot was like probably meeting my dad's expectations. seeing the report card. One time I
Yeah.
got all hundreds every subject, and it was like great. And then the next semester was like 100, 98, 100. And he was like, what happened? Uh, so, but yeah, it was kind of like, I think my own like independence was like able to, you know, control my academics. And yeah, I was pretty
Interesting.
focused on it.
When you think about your parents, either one, is there a lesson that stands out to you that comes to mind from them that you also kind of think to instill in your kids?
It's a good question. It's hard, it's like I'm the product of all of that, of my parents. And when I think about improvement, I think of improving, the ways, they were a different generation. So when raising my kids, I try to improve things. So
Mhm.
I'm very grateful for the upbringing I had, because I wouldn't be here right now. But yeah, I'm always thinking of, the next step. And
Yeah.
uh, I think that my parents probably weren't that, if I had an issue going on, they probably weren't like, oh, tell me what's going on. It was like, hey, you got to get this done, or
Yeah.
hey, we're moving. And I probably, and that was good for me accomplishing a lot on my own. Um, but now I probably sit with my kids a little bit more. If I see something going on, I'm like, hey, tell me about that.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like in a way they taught you like kind of compartmentalize a little bit and sort
Very
of keep moving
much.
forward. Yeah.
Very much. I mean, there was definitely some it wasn't like a perfect childhood. There was definitely, things, and
Yeah.
I did have to compartmentalize a lot, disassociate from different things. And that's where I focused a lot on performance, whether it was like the horses or academic, and just excelling. That was like something I could control. Um, but there's also more to life than that. But I'm lucky I was able to apply those skills to
Yeah.
school and to like the companies I've started. And now I'm like broadening out and saying, hey, let's like look at the finer things in
Yeah.
life.
That's cool. I'm curious. We'll talk about the different sort of industries you've been in, but I imagine you've been around a lot of different people and unique people. When you think about some of the commonalities of the best leaders you've been around, whether it be film or even what you're doing today or previously done, are there a couple of traits that come to mind that stand out from those leaders?
I think I'd probably say being open, being fair, and being like having a lot of empathy. Um yeah. I think, the leader probably that, and I never met him, but it was Lincoln, that's always been, you know, just someone that I looked up to, that, he really brought in his rivals, and, wanted to hear from them and learn what he could, and, be very, very, very open. And I think that's really important, is to, like I don't want, as a leader, I don't want anyone to be scared of me and not voice their opinion, not challenge me. Like I want to hear it all. Like I sort of see as like information or opinions, they're like hors d'oeuvres. You want to see them all when they get passed around. You might say no to a lot
Yeah.
of them, but you want to see what's there. So um I think it's important to being open, and surrounding yourselves with, picking the team that aren't just going to say yes to you, that are
Yes.
actually going to be thoughtful and feel secure enough with themselves to speak their mind. And the leaders also got to make them feel comfortable enough to do that, because the leader can't
Yeah.
do it all on his own, right? A leader can only do so much. It's really kind of like setting the foundation, but you're a leader in your ability to lead other people and have those other people be effective. So it's all about making them effective.
So on that note, a lot of people say like my door is always open, right? But it's not really, and there's repercussions and politics involved. Is there a tip you would give a new manager or a leader to say if you truly want people to feel safe and disarmed and to share their opinions, like make sure you do this thing. Like what would that thing be? How do you get people to be more open?
A good question. I notice now in this environment, no one's going to the office anymore. And I think that's something that's missing where I like it being in the office and seeing my team around and just having the casual interfaces, where people get comfortable with each other. I don't know if there's like one tip. It's really like just be involved, and
Yeah.
be um ha- work on a relationship, but like for me, whenever, I try to also make people, feel comfortable. So I'll look for the positive in every comment and say, hey, this is great that you did this, but hey, look at something a different way. um but yeah, it's hard to give like specific advice, but to someone who's, coming into an organization. But I think it's like be present and
Uh,
show your personality, as an individual and not just like the workhorse, that you
yeah.
are. It's like be known.
I think there's something to be said for those moments that are not when the meeting starts, right? It's like at lunch, whatever, between meetings. Those are the times I feel like you get to know people, personally or professionally. So that makes
Definitely.
sense. You mentioned the word empathy. I read something where somebody asked you about like sort of your maybe best traits that you feel like stand out. One of them was empathy, which I thought was interesting. And you kind of explained that. But you had another one and you said you felt like one of your traits was limitlessness.
Made up word. Yeah.
If I'm saying it correctly, can you, when you think about that word and like maybe how you feel like you've been kind of limitless or limitlessness, like can you share a little bit about what that means to you and how that's
Yeah.
impacted you?
Well, I could say like on a practical, way, something that's, I think more tangible. It's like, I've switched careers, like massive shifts, probably like every, 5 years or so. This one, I think I'm going on 7, but, and it's, going in without knowing anything. And, like the last company, or maybe I guess it was 2 companies ago, I had this idea, it was crazy. And I ended up exiting that. And we had like 98% market share. Um, and I'm trying, it's kind of like I see a pattern here, and it's really like, it's almost like a beginner's mindset when you don't know all the things that are going to limit you. You don't know what the boundaries are. You don't know what the ceiling is. You don't know like the way that things are being done now and why they're being done. You just go in, you look at it, and you're like, this doesn't make any sense. It should be this way. And you think you might spend a lot of time validating that, like, okay, and tweaking it, but you come up with something like, no, it really, really, really should be done this way. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to do it that way. And everyone else is going to say, you're crazy. Why hasn't it already been done before? Um,
We've been doing this
oh,
for
we can't
years.
do
Yeah.
that. Yeah. And it's all BS. It's like anything can happen, anything can change. But you need the mindset. And it's almost like if you're in an industry for too long, you lack that. And it was like I got a snapshot of it early on, like when I was building, software companies, and I wouldn't hire anyone who worked at a bank, any developer that worked at a bank for more than 18 months. Because like my companies were about doing something innovative, breaking things, doing a new way. The bank mindset is do not mess anything up. We went from like a release every week just to, keep things going. The bank is like a release once every 6 or 9 months, and it's planned out, and it's not, and you have to ask for permission and all the way up, and nobody wants to, or it's like a lot of like, yeah, well, I won't. but it's
Yeah, you're just sort of trained to have all these,
you're trained to
guardrails.
be
Yeah.
have limits,
Yeah.
and you can't, you're used to you getting permission, and you're not incentivized at all to take the risk, so you haven't developed those parts of you. um so, and people don't even realize they're victim of that, they're in that. So for me, like, you also need to be optimist, and you need to, I think, be sharp to like navigate your way around a new industry, right? Or be comfortable. Like when I left the derivatives trading world, like I was one of a few people in the world that knew how this stuff worked. And then I went into film, and I like watched 4 movies a year my whole life. I was but you have to be confident enough in
Yeah.
yourself to like, and be comfortable asking the right questions, and all that. But I think you don't want to know too much, right? And you want
Yeah.
to, and that's like the sort of the more tangible way. But even with my kids, I'll say, let's do this. They're like, I can't do that. And I'm like, well, let's not focus on the what I can't do. Let's focus on what we can do, because we will get, we'll get there.
Yeah.
So it's like just not seeing that limit, not being aware of it.
Interesting. So the two companies, if I'm getting them right, one of them being like a B2B supply chain platform, Tech Trader, and then Yellow Jacket Software. Like when you look back, were those like, obviously interesting at the time, and you're not doing those now? Um, Two questions. Were they successful and you moved on? And then the other question is like, from that experience, is there a lesson or two that you feel like you learned the most outside of what we just discussed? I don't want to discount the time, because obviously, um, there were very unique times in your
Yeah.
life.
Well, I mean, they're both successful in different ways. But I do think my biggest successes come from mistakes. That's where you really
Tell me about
learn
that.
something, and you figure something out. And if it's like the first time you do something, it's and it all works out well, you don't really learn anything. Then you get a chip on your shoulder, and you think everything's going to be great, and then you have, you see it later. So, um, but yeah, Tech Trader, I was 25 and had 100 employees. So that was just a huge growth uh area for me. And that was in the late 90s. It was way before this whole like every startup craze
Yeah.
and VC. I think there was like 5 VCs, or some like small amount out there. And but I learned a lot just because it was again that innocence that I had, the limitlessness that I could do it and talk to these VCs that I didn't know, and just say, hey, this is how the world's going and we need to do this. And I raised like a lot of money doing that. So that, I learned a lot, that it helped me build confidence, to speak my mind, and to do that. I think one of the things that I also, thought I could do a lot on my own at the time. And I wasn't as collaborative, or I felt more, let's say, guarded with the competitors and with the other, companies in the landscape. And I remember seeing one of our competitors was purchased for a lot of money, like in, more than $1 billion. And it's like our company was arguably better. But at the trade shows, I'd see those two founders talking to each other a lot.
Ah,
And I didn't talk to anyone. It was like, I'm guarding these secrets that we have, I don't want to get it out. And that's why I really, learned the second time around is you got to collaborate more, also, if you want to have an exit, it's like, there's not that many hostile takeovers in this world. It's like, there's got to be a relationship, there. And I pretty much became friendly with competitors, with everyone we would work with all the, there was, when I ended up selling Yellow Jacket, we had like 3 different bids for us, but I was friendly with all those people. And that was just a big, lesson for me. It was just more of a mind shift that it's not just all about your individual accomplishment and what you create. It's really like how you fit in with a broader ecosystem. So
Damn, that's a
those
great
are like
story. Yeah.
personal lessons. Yeah.
Usually those lessons aren't like that big of a financial sort of like, observation, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah. What I didn't say with the first one, the other company got, it was like over $1 billion, and then, 2001 crash. So we were victim, of that. So
Yeah.
it didn't end that well. And so, yeah, I was like, this was a big, it was a big hit. That was a big hit for me, and it was something I could have avoided.
Okay, a quick question on this, but I don't want to forget this question. When you think about your career, who has had the biggest impact on you so far and why?
That's a good question. Who has had the biggest impact? I think me. you know, I don't know. It's like, I think it's no, you know what? I'd like to re-answer that. It's my kids. And because what I'm doing right now is the most impactful thing that I've ever done. It's where I feel, purpose and mission. And it's like,
Yeah.
um, it makes me think about the future. It makes me think about the future that they're gonna inherit. And I think everything else I've done until now has been more stepping stones to building my capabilities. But now I'm applying those capabilities to the right, to the right cause.
Yeah.
So that's they came a little bit later in life and later in my, career.
Yeah.
But they're the biggest
They're the
impact.
compass moving forward. It sounds like that's awesome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what can you help me understand just sort of the timeline, like, and kind of, I want to know why this, but like the farm project, like what was that exactly? And like, how did this sort of come about?
Yeah. So that's when I was in the film business, and I'd met Zoe, who's the mother of my kids, and we met. She got pregnant and was just starting to look at the food that we were eating. And I just wanted to have like a perfectly healthy baby. And I started looking at labels, and it's like GMOs. And I asked people, like, do you know what GMOs are? Not a single person I knew what a GMO was. I was like, this is interesting. Like, who knows what it is, and who's saying it's okay? And I was reading, I would say, okay, let's eat, organic food, just regular, how nature intended, how it was, 50 years ago, and saw the price point on that. It was like so inaccessible. And that used to be the most accessible food, and the packaged stuff was the expensive stuff. I'm like, why is the stuff that we know is really good for us? Why is that, and that's just natural. Why is that so expensive? So that led me on this whole, down this rabbit hole. And I I wanted to just learn more about farming, and I met some guys that were starting a farm in Austin, Texas, and they needed funding, and I ended up funding and joining and ultimately running the farm. And the whole idea was to make organic produce, to grow organic produce with zero waste and make it as affordable, as possible. And
So
through that,
hold on. So
hmm?
at this point, are you saying I'm gonna like 2 feet in film career, producing, financing, I'm gonna put that aside? Have you made that decision yet or not yet?
I'm kind of putting it aside. I mean, it was the 35th film, and that's where I met Zoe on. And in 5 years, it was just a lot, and there was just a lot of shenanigans, like with the different projects. And then I know I have having a kid, and I start thinking, like, do I want to put my resources into these crazy people? um, that are more, egotistical or like need their work of art out there?
Yeah.
Or am I going to invest in my kid somehow? And that's where I just kind of not taking any new projects and just
Okay.
researching. So I hadn't really officially, there was no like time where I just said, I'm done with this. I mean, I guess there was, ultimately I just stopped taking projects and I stopped doing things. And I was focused on, I was just wanted to learn more about food and farming.
How many films total? 35, you said?
Yeah.
And the last film is where you met Zoe?
Yeah.
That's ironic. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Um, and, yeah, I'd finally gotten the hang of it. And I think I was like a decent producer, but I just thought my efforts would be so much more valuable applied to bigger problems. When I started the film business, my whole idea was to make content that would open people's minds and that would lead to a better world, for all of us. But
Yeah.
I wasn't as confident in my own creative ability, so I started just financing other people's projects, and I didn't really do my own projects. But yeah, and then I started learning about food, and through this farm experience, I learned a lot. When I was like the biggest, there were probably like two big takeaways. One was this aha moment when we pulled the first turnip out of the ground, and it was all dirty, and I wiped it on my jeans. It was three of us. We each pulled a turnip out. We wiped down our jeans. We took a bite, and it was so good, and not just the taste, but the feeling and being connected, to the land and knowing what went into it. And I was like, everyone needs to have this feeling. This is like part of our inheritance just for being humans on this planet. We all had this, and we live like in our houses and we live in cities, and we're so disconnected. We don't even know where the stuff grows. We don't know who grew it. We don't know what chemicals are on it. And there's a lot of chemicals on our food. I mean, a lot, like 52 different pesticides on lettuce, and they're like neurotoxins, and there's all kind of hormone, disruptors, and there's a lot of stuff. But
Appeal and things like that. Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of bad stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, but there's also just this experiential,
Yeah.
component of
How do you bottle that? Right. Yeah.
being connected. Yeah. And I was like, we should all have this, and having it just changes you as an individual, like the way you look at life, and the way I think you are as a consumer. It's like I want my things to have come to me like this, and without like being too industrialized. And
Yeah.
but anyway, so that was like this profound moment that it was really magical. And we all missed that. And then the other thing was just seeing how we put all this work into growing this organic head of lettuce with no waste, with no chemicals, no excess. But then we had to put it in a plastic clamshell and put that in the corrugated box and put that on a refrigerated truck that would then go to a distribution center and unload it and sit on a shelf. Then it would get back on to another truck that would go to the grocery store. And the product that ends up at the grocery store is not the product that was grown on the farm. It's 7 days or 10 days old. And the nutritional content just starts dropping after it's cut. It's like lettuces lose like 30% of their nutritional value every 3 days or so. Spinach, it's 50% in the first 24 hours. And that's where you get this lettuce that's floppy, that doesn't taste good, that goes bad in your fridge in a couple days. But not only that, half of the stuff goes bad before you eat it. So all the environmental resources that went into it, all the emissions, like all the water, all the the chemicals, like if you're buying from, the conventional farms, like all
Yeah.
the runoff that goes into the ocean, all the environmental damage, half of that was for no good reason, because half of that food never gets eaten. And it just dawned on me that, um, one, it makes zero sense whatsoever to go to a grocery store to buy fresh food because it's not fresh. And
Yeah.
that's just, I think we just got so used to it that we're like, it's crazy to do it any other way, but it really is. I think when grocery stores first came out and they started having produce, I think everyone thought it was crazy at that time,
Yeah.
because
And now it's like
we're,
normal to buy your lettuce in a plastic bin.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's fresh. It's called fresh food, which should be
Yeah.
living, right? Or
Yeah.
very close to living, and not dead in a box in a warehouse with lights and refrigeration. And that's what it is. And so that's where I just saw, this is just one of these things as an outsider to food, but I saw this, like, it really makes no sense. I did a lot of research, a lot of thinking about it, and then to make sure that we could do it a different way. And that's where I really came up with the concept of the Farm Project, which is really to educate, really re-educate and reconnect people with their food, to give them that experience that I had pulling, the turnip out of the ground. And then also just, and I know like everyone's not going to grow their own food. I mean, that's not that realistic, but we could get our food from the farmers market or for all the local farms, um, around us. It's just a distributed way of getting food rather than the centralized industrialized way. And we
Yeah.
needed to raise awareness for those farms. And one of the initiatives was Let Us Grow, which was, hey, by teaching people how to grow their own food, they're going to gain, one, they're going to get their own food with no pesticides, with no nutrient loss, and with this amazing experience, like, pulling the turnip out of the ground. But they're also going to gain an appreciation for quality food and where it comes from. And they're going to do the rest of their purchasing. They're going to move those dollars to the local farms, right?
Yeah.
To the people. Or they're going to, when they go to the restaurant, where did your lettuce come from? How was it grown? Or where did this meat come from? They feel qualified to ask questions. So,
It's almost like the Trojan horse of thinking about the rest of how you
yeah,
eat.
I
Yeah.
think that, like, there's like, the earth, today or this last week, the hottest days on record, and you've got fires and you've got climate change, and we've got all these issues. And then there's all these companies that are doing this, but it's really not all the company's fault. It's like the consumers demanding this product. But the consumer is just so disconnected,
Yeah.
don't really think about like how the thing they want is made. And consumers are so disconnected with food, and we've let our food system run amok. And so this Let Us Grow is like a tool just to get people thinking about it, right? to
Yeah.
to to get them to be mindful of a bigger thing. I never set out like, hey, let's just sell a whole bunch of growing systems. um that
It
almost
doesn't
seemed
seem,
like beneath me or something,
yeah.
but it was
Yeah.
like, I want to do something really big,
Yeah.
and I want to get people, to think more. Like, one of the one thing that's always in my mind is like in the 70s when beer making kits were legalized. And at that time there was only like, well, I don't know how many beers there were, but there weren't that many, but it was all the same stuff. It was like yellow fizzy water.
Yeah.
And you got people making their own beer. It didn't shut down breweries or anything like that, but people gaining an appreciation for the hops and the barley and for the bottling process and for all of this stuff. And now we have more microbreweries. There's a broader range of beer in this country than there was in Germany or, anywhere else. And I think it's because of that. And I want to do the same thing for food and get people engaged. And I think we get a bunch of growers, right? We go back to being a society of people who are like little farmers. all of the other food, there's going to be microbreweries, micro
Yeah.
growers, all around us, and we're going to get what we want.
So
But
when
we've
you
got
guys
to
were
start that
standing,
change.
when you guys were standing on that farm, were you like shipping it to a grocery store, or like was sort of a what were you doing with
We
the produce?
started restaurants and farmers markets.
Okay.
And then, but it was such a, the whole idea was to scale this up in a very big way so that everyone would have access, right, to low cost organic food. So
Okay.
we started small, and it was a real pain in the butt going to chefs and restaurants because each one, they wouldn't wake up. They had a long night. They wouldn't wake up. We couldn't make our delivery. But anyway, we managed that. And then it was like going to the next level was the grocery store. And the price that we got, which was like almost like cut in half when we'd go to the grocery, but it was because of all the waste.
Oh,
So I was
interesting.
like,
Yeah.
we're like, so we had to like double or triple our size to get half of the rate,
Yeah.
so we were like standing still. And that's why I realized like our farm would never work. And all these other farms, small farms, don't work. I mean, they barely work.
Yeah. They're just getting by.
They're just getting by. It's because our food distribution system is messed up. And that's why we need to support them. And we're
Okay.
not, and we have to make these changes because half we're just wasting half of
Yeah.
everything, so if we make these changes, we'll cut the costs in half, so
It's
we'll
better
have
to
good
make these
food.
changes than spray other stuff on our produce to make it last longer, which blows my mind. To even eat something that, I have no idea what's in it at all.
Yeah.
Um, so the farm project is more of like an educational sort of project. And then how did like how did you even produce? I know there's like maybe there's other options of different things where you can grow herbs inside. Like I'm just curious, like how did you like when you looked around, you said, do I need to build a better mousetrap or does this thing exist? Like, are there things like this? Like, how did you come up with it?
For the Let Us Grow. Yeah. So Let Us Grow, the idea that was going to be like one of 5 pillars for the farm project, and that's probably where my, I had eyes bigger than my stomach thinking I'm going to create this umbrella thing. There's going to be 5 different companies. They're all going to work together to, improve the food system.
Yeah.
And I thought I just hire this team that would like, I had the idea for Let Us Grow, they'll run it and I'll go start these other companies. But I ended up, it was just so Let Us Grow ended up being such a big thing. I ended up growing that, building that full time and haven't, put as much effort or had as much resources right to put into the farm project. And I think a lot we're doing through Let Us Grow.
Yep.
But at the time I saw, well, hydroponics, I saw the value in that. And especially you got 50% of people living in cities and people moving around a lot, not knowing what's in the dirt, that we had to be forward thinking. I'd love for everyone to have a soil-based organic farm, but that's just not realistic. So I saw hydroponics as a great tool. And you could go, go to Home Depot and buy PVC pipe and put your own thing together. But it's like,
Yeah.
who's going to do that? I mean, well, some people do that, but if we're going to have broad adoption, it's got to be something very easy to use, very even beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's got to work. And the thing that's with growing, whether you're growing in the ground or you're growing hydroponically, you have to germinate your plants, and often that's in a different system. And germination is probably the most like fear invoking, that's where all the anxiety from growing comes. It's like, how far do you push the seed down? How much water do you add? Like you keep coming back, nothing's happening. I add more water, and that takes a lot of time, and that's where a lot of the failure is. And so when the idea for Let Us Grow is almost like the initial is you could use any hardware that you want, but you really need these plants pre-started for you.
Okay.
and use the expert farmers to pre-start them and send them to you. So it's still sending produce, but sending it living and sending, living plants that are like 1/11th of the size of a mature plant. It's almost like a model like we start, you finish. But by doing that head start, you get around that anxiety part of growing. You also get 100% germination, and you get a harvest in one half the time that you normally would, because we grew at half time. So it's kind of like more instant gratification.
Yeah. You still get the
And
feeling like you're responsible for growing it.
you are, no,
Yeah.
exactly. But we did, and
Yeah.
that's the key thing. You have the connection with it, but we did the hard part, and that more ensures success. And I thought that at first that we could do that with different hardware that was out there, and then realized, like, we need to, have our own. And that was also, made with the right materials, and, made the right, sustainable, we use the ocean bound plastic, and it's recyclable. Everything's recycled and recyclable, and Prop 65 compliant. So, because you're starting to now grow in plastic, and that sounds scary. It sounded scary to me. I think the single-use plastics are really bad, but if you have a durable plastic that doesn't also, have any contaminants or anything that's going to leach out, it's going to last a long time, and it's solid, and it's, then I think, that works. So that's where it really focused on, creating a device as well. So it's
Okay.
really putting these two concepts together, the unit and the plants. It made for a very complicated business model, because we're building hardware. We also have
Sort of the
farms across the
subscription.
country.
Yeah.
Um, and then we have like AI and like an, app and technology that, figures out what you should be growing based off of your zip code, like in Portland, or, me here in LA, or you're in Massachusetts. So we have all this in that we predict when your plants are ready to harvest. So it was a lot to put together, but in that, probably like most of the Silicon Valley, like VCs, don't want to see, because they want to see, hey, just do one thing really well, and have a very simple model. But I think that my focus was on customer success, and so
Yeah.
for the customer to be successful, I had to do all these different things with the business. And
Is Lettuce Grow like VC funded, so to speak, or like do you not have to worry about, you know, sort of demands from others?
um we do have some funding. It's mostly individuals. There's a few small institutions, but they're all very supportive, of
Okay.
me and the vision. So, and
So,
I've
yeah.
also, personally, and Zoe also personally put a lot of, our own capital, into the business. So I would say pretty much we run the business
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
we
The
want to.
decisions you made are in the best interest of customer success.
Exactly. And we're also, we're set up as a public benefit corp. So I set that up that way, on purpose. So it's like the goal isn't to maximize profit. It's to maximize the value creation
Okay.
and the benefit, that we provide.
How are you doing on time? Like, do you have 20 more minutes? Or are
I'm
you
good. Yeah, I'm
okay.
good.
Okay, cool. Can you tell me a little bit about the plant food? Like, this is my wife's question, who questions everything. She's like, "Do you know what's in that, or did you just put it in there?" I was like, "No, I didn't actually read it." Like, is that like, what's the thought of plant food, and sort of like, is that sort of, I don't know, organic or safe, or what does that look like?
Yeah. Well, I think, with hydroponics, I mentioned, I think California Prop 65, but I think that's the term. And I don't really see that readily used, but, California has this proposition that's like, and I think there's like 4,000 different, chemicals that are known to cause or potentially cause cancer or reproductive harm, and things like that. And my car's got a big label, and if you walk into Starbucks, there's a sign that's
Yes.
like, it's not California Prop 65, just being in there, and like the lids and stuff. So, but my focus is on making sure every single thing is California Prop 65 compliant, because the organic thing, there's all these different ways around it
Yeah.
and all that. But I think it's more applies to growing organic, like, or growing in the soil. So
Okay.
my focus has been on that, on Prop 65. And I think that's where I think anyone growing hydroponically, I would like to see them adopt that standard. But in terms of the food, you could use different sources. You could use an organic source, which would be microbial, like a microbial based, right? Or you can use more of like a mineral base, and that's what we use. But if anyone wants to use a microbial, I could give recommendations on that. But the problem is that the water source that we have, that all the metro areas have chlorine and chloramine that kill the microbial
Oh,
action
gotcha.
in
Okay.
those. So then you needed to use special filters and things like that. So it's a complicated discussion, but we've used all like natural sources for our mineral based nutrients.
Okay.
So uh, it's all like natural, but you wouldn't use the term organic because it's not microbial based.
Okay. Um, is there anything else just around lettuce grow that you feel like we haven't talked about, that you think people should know?
Well, I think people should know that this is for you. This isn't for your aunt who's a great gardener. Um, this is for you. It's for anyone who eats food, and you should have that experience of
Yeah.
growing your own food. And we make it so easy and fun, and it's delicious. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard where people say, like someone received as a gift or something, they're like, this is my number one favorite thing I didn't know I needed. Um, because again, we're so disconnected, like I can't do that, or but that's why I build. It's like it was so hard, especially in LA, so hard to get people to go to the farm to get that experience I got
Oh,
pulling the
yeah.
turnip out of the ground. I'm like, and that's a lot of the idea of Let Us Grow. Let's bring the farm to the people and give people that experience. But you will get that experience and it will be transformative. And go for it. That's
Yeah.
that's what I'd say. Because the number one thing, I could go to so many, I go to events and dinner parties, and so many people have heard about Let Us Grow, and they're like, I've been watching it for a year. I'm like, well, why are you watching it for a year? Why don't you do something? And it's
Yeah.
just this like little fear they have.
Yeah. It's
Um,
interesting though. Like I remember the first time I saw the Swiss chard, I was like, this is what it's supposed to look like.
yeah, well, it's like also you don't see, we grow a lot of things that you can't get in the grocery store. 95% of our diet comes from 13 different foods, which is nuts. And three of those are meats.
Interesting.
So
Okay. I was thinking about like
we,
eggs came to mind, like dairy, that sort of thing.
yeah, well, that might, be in that 13. I forget, what the list is, but there's something like 30,000 known, edible plants and foods. And I believe you want to get like a rainbow. I try to
Yeah.
eat the rainbow, and each color food and different things has different nutrients, phytonutrients, things that we need. But because plants don't travel well, we don't have that many options. But if you grow your own food at home, it tastes so much better, and you have so much more ability to eat the rainbow and to eat so many more things. And you're going to start seeing things like Swiss chard, and you're like, what do I do with Swiss chard? Um, and it's like figuring things out. So it's kind of fun also to
Yeah.
experiment. And there's no right way to do it. That's where a lot of people think, oh, like when do I harvest it? It's like, well, you can pull some off right now and it'll taste more sweet. You could pull it off in 5 weeks and it's going to be more bitter and it's going to be bigger. And like you let the arugula go too long, you'll have bolting and you'll have little flowers but you can eat the flowers, and that's really great. So you just start to interact. There's no like right way. The thing is, the growth, again, the plants don't travel well. So we see a limited number of plants in the grocery store, and they're very uniform.
Yeah.
And it's only things that look a certain way. But I had a chef here that was growing with us, and he was pulling off these leaves, and he thought they were collard greens, and he kept making stuff. And then after a while, a broccoli came out, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, these were broccoli, leaves." And he's like, "I've never cooked. I never knew that you could cook with the broccoli leaves." Because when he goes to the farmer's market, he's not getting the broccoli with the broccoli leaves. You're not seeing that at the grocery store, but they're great. They're nutritious, and it's like wasteful not to have them. So you
Interesting.
get to it opens up a whole world for you.
Yeah. Wow. Um, okay, I wanted to ask you a couple quick questions. We talked about film earlier. I'm wondering, was there like a favorite movie that you were a part of or produced that comes to mind?
Yeah, I would say it's between two Skeleton Twins, which is the smallest movie, from a budgetary standpoint. And Before Midnight. And that was also a relatively small one, but also, just it was just so nice and so easy to make, and just the group of people that I'd be friends for life, with. Um, but one thing I often think, and I bring up, a number of times in my data, and just like projects I'm working on, the like Skeleton Twins was very budget constrained. One of it, there's like multiple suicide attempts in it. So it's not like it's some in it, but it is a special movie to see, but it's like something that was like more risky,
Yeah.
to make. And there was only so much we were going to put in it. But because we had a limited budget, we had to question every single scene. We had to question every set. We questioned the music that we put on. And because we did all that, I think we made like a really phenomenal film. And then I've worked on other films that have 10 times or 20 times the budget that weren't nearly as good, because the
Yeah.
budget's there and you can do whatever, you could do whatever you want. And a lot of the people are like, "Oh, this is going to be a big movie. This is great." And we're going to do all this stuff, but then you're not really limited. And I think it's really those constraints are where it brings out the best of you. And it's really tough, and it's really hard, and it's like cutting off you think you're cutting off your right arm and making different things, but you end up being so much more thoughtful about what you're doing.
It's like a
And
forcing function of creativity, right?
yes, you have to be creative. And it's like on those small films, you have to be really creative. And that's why you have these outliers, that I think that really come out there. Whereas a lot of the bigger films, I mean, if you have so much budget, you could do some cool stuff with
Yeah.
that. But I wasn't in that, in that world. But that was just a big experience. And, we're in a tough market now, tough economy, tough like funding environment, and and so I apply a lot of that. It's like, hey, we can't do everything that we want to do, right? We've got to be think like a small movie,
Yeah.
right, and
Interesting.
justify everything.
And do you produce the Steve Jobs film?
I
Right.
did, yeah.
Was there a fascination? I'm curious with Jobs. Like, did you ever meet him in the past?
No, no, that was early on when I was like learning the business, and that project was there, and I don't remember. It was kind of like it needed financing, and I helped structure it in a way that made more sense, I thought. And yeah.
Cool.
But
Okay.
there was nothing that was,
No, like
some of
Steve
the
Jobs
projects I was
obsession.
involved.
Yeah.
No, I don't have a Steve
Okay.
Jobs obsession. Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. I'm always curious about that when I see that. Okay. So just curious. Well, I know we talked about kids earlier. you're super ambitious in your career. What do you do to show up as a present dad, but still sort of balance, sort of work and life?
I'm fully present when I'm with my kids. I think I'm lucky. I always wanted to have kids, at a young age. I wasn't sure why. I think now I know why, but I'm really grateful that I didn't, because I have them earlier, because I think I wouldn't have been as successful, or I wouldn't be as good of a dad. But when I'm with
Interesting.
them, they're
Yeah.
the number one most important thing to me. And it's hard, and I need to be on their, I put myself on their wavelength, and then everything's easy and it's fun. When I'm on when I'm on the work wavelength, like I've got, hey, bath time's going to be done by 6:30, so I can do this, and like get to a call, then things don't move that smoothly. But if I actually get on their wavelength, I will still be done and ready for that call, because
Yeah.
it'll just be more like graceful. So
That's so true though. And anytime I'm like, hey, I got to do this thing tonight. I got work. And it's like everything before that with the kids feels rushed, and not at their pace. If I skip reading time, then my son is not sort of in that calm zone. Right.
yeah. No, and you're not fully in it. It's like a list of tasks, right, that you need to do, and you're not then getting all the joy of being a parent. It's not coming. They're not getting the best from you, but
Yeah.
you're not getting all the joy from it. And I think when it's really dialed in, when you can get on that wavelength and not think about work, and then it's like it's beautiful, and it's amazing, and it's different than when you're like, I got to do all these things. And it's
Yeah.
tough. I mean, I know not every parent can do that, right? Because we have a lot of obligations, on our time. But the more that you can do that, I think, the better.
Yeah. That's a great tip. Do you have like an evening or kind of nighttime routine, like before bed by chance to kind of,
Just me.
yeah.
Um, I I disconnect from, all electronic things. I try to, at least my phone and email for a couple hours before. I have more of a morning routine, where when I don't, I have my kids half the time, but when I don't have them, I try to go on a beach walk like 6:30, 6 a.m. and just have that like alone time, grounding time. Um, but in the evening, not so much, but I do try to just end all the work,
Disconnected. Yeah.
electronics. Yeah. And I used before I did that, I would wake up in the middle of the night, or wake up like before I wanted to wake up, thinking of the 30 different things on my to-do
Yeah.
list. And I don't do that anymore. I just wake up and the to-do list is not there. And I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah. What else is part of the morning routine? So you said the walk. Anything else that you do in that sort of first hour or two?
After the walk, I like when I take a shower, I almost all unless if I'm like sick or not feeling well, I won't do it, but I take a cold shower.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. I
Yeah,
just
at least
started
30
taking,
seconds. Hmm?
okay. I just started like cold plunging a
Yeah.
couple of weeks ago. It's in the garage. It goes down to 37, but I'm at like 55 right now.
Go to like I have one too, which is it's empty right now, but I keep it at like 47, which is like good for me. And some weeks
Have
I
you,
would
so
do
you've
it.
done it routinely?
Yeah, sometimes I'll do it 2 or 3 times a week, and then sometimes I won't do it for 2 or 3 weeks. So, but it's because and when you don't do it often, it's like scary to go back in. But I think I think that's really helpful. But all these things, I also do yoga, and I'll do kundalini, and and some of the things that we do are really tough. And I realize like it's the same thing with the cold plunge. It's like really tough to be in there cold, but you have to be fully focused on like on the inside, and not on the outside. And there's not that many moments in your day to day that you have that. And so I think it's almost like this meditative thing.
Yeah.
It's like painful, but you can do it. And you've got to like, yeah, just focus, right, to get through it. And that, I think that's my key takeaway, apart from the physical benefits. But that's what I get from like a yoga pose or doing
Yeah.
something Kundalini, when your arms are out for a very long time.
What is Kundalini? That's like a form of
It's
yoga?
it's more like a breathing
Oh, okay.
exercises, but it's like many thousand year old. You could call it like Kundalini yoga, but it's a lot of different postures where you're breathing
Okay.
in different ways.
How you describe the cold is exactly so far how I feel about it. Like to me, it's such a challenge. Like if I can do that, once I get in, I'm fine. It's just getting in. And then I feel like it is meditative. And then I just want to like almost soak it in afterwards for like 5 or 10 minutes. Like I
Yeah.
just want to process
Yeah.
what just happened.
No, and it feels good. It's a huge accomplishment that you do it, when you get out. It's like that was almost, if you do that in the
I
morning, it's
was
almost
so
like
proud.
that's enough
Yeah.
you need to do today. You did something,
Yeah.
you really showed up for yourself.
Yeah. Um, is there a book or two that comes to mind that's made a big impact on you that you would kind of recommend other people read?
I read like the first 10 pages of so many books. Um,
Lincoln, is that one like a biography that you'd recommend?
yeah, I've read like The Team of Rivals. That's a really big book. I like that. I've got to look at my Audible, but there was one book that's really that I thought was really interesting, but I haven't read it in years. Um, Alchemy, I thought was really cool, by Roy Sutherland. It's a little off the topic that we're talking about, but it's like there's the metrics and there's the magic, and it's like we're in a world where it's very like metric driven and like putting in spreadsheets and business plans, and here's what I'm going to do. And you're kind of using like, you're tweaking things that already work. And magic is, when you actually creative and you put something out there, it doesn't make any sense from a metric standpoint, but it works. I think they use the example of there's Coca-Cola, and a company wanted to, unseat Coca-Cola as the number one. So they said, hey, we're going to make it, smaller. We're going to make it taste worse. And, whatever. And then, and that company, was Red Bull, and it ends up like from all the different ways you'd quantify, you'd say, this doesn't make any sense, smaller tastes worse and, costs a lot more. Right.
That's
But
funny. Yeah.
they found this magic formula, to get it out there. And there is a lot, I think, of gut. There's a lot of intuition with things. And that's, also getting back to the movies, the way like movies were financed, the ones that were just like another movie with a tweak and with actors that had done other successful movies, those things got funded
They're
very
predictable,
well,
essentially. Yeah.
predictable, and they would make their money back, or they make 10%. But then you had these ones that weren't predictable, that were like Black Swan or, other things. And those, I mean, some didn't do well, but some did 100x. And the predictable ones don't ever do 100x.
Yeah.
And those unpredictable ones, that's one where no one wants to fund, and that's like how I got involved in Skeleton Twins. It was like, no one wants to do that film. I'm like,
Yeah.
I want to do that one. Um, but anyway, yeah, that book talks all about like the differences and about the magic. And that's why I think with like Let Us Grow. And I think what I'm doing is like so much is focused on capturing that magic
Yeah.
and delivering that magic and not thinking about the metrics.
Yeah. I love that. Is that the best book you've listened to on Audible?
I don't know. That was one of the first ones I listened to on Audible, and I like that. I think it's
Okay.
pretty entertaining. So,
Okay. Is
I
there a
mean, now
food
I just
documentary
listen
too?
to like kids. I hear kids things like crazy. So
Yeah. That's funny. Well, they got podcasts for kids these days, I hear.
I'm
It-
listening to one on sleep right now. There's Breathe I really like. So we're talking about cold plunge and stuff like that. But I think like I'm learning, I hardly slept most of my life. I was all like accomplished. And I probably slept on average 4 or 5 hours a night for the
wow.
majority of my life. And I was proud of it. And now I'm looking like, oh my gosh, because you can't make up lost sleep. And I think not we all, but a lot of us think sleep's pretty important, but I'm learning like, no, it's like
How important.
critical. It's like
Yeah.
the number one. It's like, sleep. It's what you eat and your movement, but sleep is the foundation. So
There's this like tech CEO um who I've talked to a little bit on LinkedIn. He posted, sleep is the new coffee. I love that. I love that tag.
I like it.
I've sleep hacked quite a bit over the last year, from like seeing sleep doctors to sleeping on chili pads to changing mattresses to aura rings. I mean, you name it. To taking, certain pills, just to like, not like
Yeah.
crazy pills, but like certain supplements and stuff like that. So yeah, I love the topic. I think it's super important. And I'm not perfect or great at it, I feel, yet, but like I kind of now know my baseline of, all right, like this is the minimal I need to function. This is, sort of icing on the cake. And if I do have one of those 5 hour nights, it really takes me a couple days to recover. My diet
No,
goes to shit, like my decisions, my fuse with the kids. Um, it's not good.
no, it's like a hangover. That's why I realized the hangover isn't so much from, what you consumed. It's from the lack of sleep,
Yeah.
because it's the same feeling I get if I do a red eye, and I hate that feeling. But you asked about the routine, my nighttime routine. I didn't mention is like I used to drink 4 or 5 cups of coffee, and I had it like right when I got up. The thing that affects my nighttime routine the most is I stopped drinking coffee. And I will drink matcha, but usually I can get to like 1 or 2 o'clock before I need it or before
Okay.
I want it. But I think that actually not drinking coffee is giving me more energy, and then I'm ready to go to sleep when it's
Yeah.
time to go to sleep.
Do you do you juice as well?
No, not so much.
Okay. I was just curious. I feel like that's given me we kind of rebooted our juicing. And I feel like that's like a coffee. Like I feel so much better afterwards.
Yeah.
Like,
You're putting good stuff in your body and all the phytonutrients and all the things that you
yeah,
need.
yeah. Awesome. Man, this has been great. Jacob, I appreciate the time. I feel like I could talk to you for hours, but this is super helpful. One last question to wrap it up. Let's say you're talking to someone early on in their career. What are one or two pieces of life or career advice that you would impart on them, knowing that they want to make an impact in this world?
Yeah, I'd probably change that answer like every 6 months or so. Um, I think a lot is like on that limitlessness, it's like you've gotta, focus on what you want and in a way put some blinders on. I mean, learn as much as you can, but don't see the limits. And in a way, go with the flow. Like I truly believe there's no good and no bad. Stuff happens to me that maybe is bad for the plan that I had, but if you see that and you make the adjustment, always something good, good comes of it. So it's like being a successful entrepreneur, I think, is knowing which of those walls you can climb and which ones you have to go around, and not, be too backward looking.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this was supposed to happen, this didn't happen. It's like, okay, that didn't happen. What am I supposed to do? And it's just staying in that flow. And that's why I think, because I have lots of obstacles put in my way, but I don't see any of them. I just see them as, oh, what am I going to learn by
Yeah.
by
I mean,
making this turn here?
you said something earlier that it's always like a touchy subject in an interview about like what, your most glorious failure, like what have you learned from your setbacks? I feel like I have to time it. Like when I asked that question, you brought it up a lot earlier of like, hey, I learned more from the things that maybe are perceived failure. And I feel like it's such a huge thing to be aware of if you can be aware of it rather than just kind of soak in the failure, but like this is actually a learning lesson. And sometimes it feel like for me at least, it took a while to think that. And I feel like it's so important to point that out.
Yeah. Where is it going to take you? What could you learn from it? Where is it going to take you? And not like, oh shoot, I didn't get that done.
Yeah. Not dwell
It's
on it.
got to stay in flow. You got to stay, you can't stop and you can't be backwards looking. So, okay, this happened. What's next? And not dwelling. I think if you're dwelling, I mean, you need all your energy to go forward. You need it
Yeah.
all plus. And so you don't have any energy to put into dwelling into something that's not working.
Cool. Awesome. Well, Jacob, I appreciate it. I feel like you've given me everything I need. Just my job not to screw it up from here. So
Don't screw it up. I'm sure you won't. I really enjoyed this. I would do,
likewise.
we got to do part two sometime.
Oh, I'm down. We'll schedule at some point. Appreciate it, Jacob.
Cool. All
All right.
right. Take
Talk to
care
you
of
later.
me.
See
All
ya.
right. Bye.
Bye.